I think with that, we are live for episode 75. Now, I couldn't think of a better topic, a better thing to cover for episode 75. If you live under a rock, Bill, what are we talking about today? Yep. Mm-hmm. Hmm.
Hmm. Theories?
I don't know. Let me turn you up a little bit. I just don't want everyone to rest in peace, iPhone users.
Yeah. Can you hear me now, Adam? Okay, you can hear me.
Okay.
Do you want to restart?
Yes.
Just to
Okay.
okay.
Just take two. This is episode 75 of Trek Live. Perfectly timed. Couldn't think of a better topic to cover for episode 75. Bill, run it again. What are we talking about today?
We're talking about Brother, season 2, episode 1 of Star Trek Discovery, season premiere. Star Trek Discovery's back. It premiered on Thursday night or Friday, depending on where you live, if you're in the United States or somewhere else. So we've had a couple days to think about it, a couple days to let it kind of marinate and digest it a little bit. And today we're going to talk about our thoughts on the episode and what we think might be coming down the pike, so to speak, for season 2. We kind of have a taste of where the story is kind of going now. There was a lot offered in this episode. It has some standalone elements. It seems to obviously be setting up an arc that's going to run for the season. So we're going to talk about all that stuff. And we want to hear from everybody out there. If you're here for the chat, for the live chat, help us, help drive the conversation. Tell us, what you want to talk about. Tell us what you thought, and we'll engage with you. We'll answer, questions. We'll respond to things you have to say. And you guys will be as much part of the conversation as Dan and I here. So I see Adam in the chat. Rob is in the chat, already here and excited to talk about Brother.
Yes. Yep.
So we're definitely looking forward to this. I've been looking forward to this for months, and certainly since Thursday night, since I watched it, I've been eager to talk about it. I think we should go right into it. Maybe we'll cover like rewatch stuff at the end instead of let's not like hold off anymore. I want to hear what you have to say. What did you think overall of the premiere episode?
I loved it.
Yes.
People on Twitter and on other facets are saying that this is better than season 1. Mm-hmm. I don't want to jump on that bandwagon. I think it was a great episode. There were so many like yes moments. There were so many like mystery. I think it might be. I think in my book, it's a perfect premiere. I think it does a great job of kind of introducing a bunch of characters, but also introducing to storylines that I'm guessing will carry out through the whole season. It does a great job of setting up this mystery. I will say before Bill and I get into this, spoilers. If you haven't seen this episode, you should not be watching this. Go watch it right now. Come back. Listen to after we talk about it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but just first thoughts. Great episode, Bill.
Yeah, I echo that. I was a fan pretty quickly. I was buying into the fresh. The tone of it is a little lighter, a little bit more a little more relaxed, which we kind of knew coming in. I think the trailers and the promotional stuff made it pretty clear that this wasn't going to be quite as heavy as season 1, and that was made obvious very early on in the episode. I love the new characters that they introduced pretty much across the board. Obviously Captain Pike we're going to talk about in a bit. That's a huge element that is generating a lot of conversation online as a positive thing from this episode that people are excited about for the season as well. And Tig Notaro, who plays the engineer of the Hiawatha, which factors into the story, was a welcome addition too. She was fun.
Yep.
So a couple of really cool, interesting new characters introduced. Characters in a little bit of a different place than they were in season 1. Existing characters, I mean, people like Stamets and Burnham are dealing with different things than we saw them dealing with in season 1. So there's all kinds of things being teed up for what's going to come down the line. I think they did a really good job of teeing those things up and establishing like the ground rules for what's going to happen for the next 14 episodes. And I think it had enough standalone elements too. It's not just expositional stuff. It had its own little story. It had its own thing that it was doing that'll let this episode kind of stand apart as its own thing, which I was grateful for. So yeah, I was definitely a big fan. I enjoyed it thoroughly. I especially thought the beginning of it was great. Like the teaser, I thought the way that it opened, coming out of the recap and kind of unexpectedly going into this flashback. I want to talk about the flashbacks because I think that's a big element of the episode. Flashing back to young Burnham and young Spock and that the beginnings of that relationship. It opens with that instead of going right into the Enterprise, pulling up to the Discovery. It kind of leaves you hanging in suspense to get to that. And I thought that was really effective. And then once the Enterprise stuff happens and you see Pike come onto the ship, I think all that stuff is spectacular, really, really good, lively Star Trek, classic Star Trek stuff. So, yeah, I want to talk about more as we kind of get going, but I think we're both kind of establishing that we were really happy with the results.
Yep.
Yeah, and I guess one thing I want to respond to that you said that I'll agree with. There is a lot of talk online, a lot of people saying this is already better than season 1, and it very well might be, like, at the end of the day. But I want to hold off on that kind of like broad. Yeah. Like I want to. First of all, I think part of the reason this is so refreshing is because we've been through what we were through in season 1.
Yep.
You know,
that's
like
the point I was gonna make. Yep.
Yeah, like the way Pike is a response to Lorca is huge. Like that's as much as awesome as Anson Mount is, he's incredible as Pike, and we're going to talk more about that. But half of that is because he's a response to Lorca. You know, we've been through what we've been through with the crew. We saw what the crew had to deal with, and we saw the kind of person Lorca was. And getting this breath of fresh air is really an effective thing. It really works. So they kind of go hand in hand in a weird way. They're very different, but I think season 2 is as refreshing as it is because of what we've been experiencing in season 1, or what we did experience in season 1. So I'm not going to rush to judgment on that. I want to see how it plays out, and I don't want to give like a backhanded compliment or any kind of insult, anything that might imply season 1 wasn't good, because I love season 1. So I'm going to pump the brakes on that it's better than season 1 already after one episode, just like you are. But it's certainly very promising, and it very well might end up that way. I might prefer season 2 to season 1. That's remains to be seen.
Yep.
But we'll see.
Yeah, I think, like you said, I think they're going the route of each season does complement each other and build on each other, and I think that's kind of a formula for a successful show. So as we go deeper into Discovery, into season 3 or 4, however long we go, I think it'll just continue to get better. So.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's important, especially for a show, to kind of do what it's doing and have a drastic shift in tone from season to season. I think it's got to make sense. It can't just be like it shouldn't be kind of like a hard reset and just say, oh, it's going to be fresh, it's going to be different. I think they did a good job of not making it feel like an arbitrary change. It's a natural change that is sparked by the difference at the top of the command chain, the chain of command on the ship. you know, Lorca's presence and Pike's presence set the tone for the kind of crew this is, the kind of things this crew's doing, the way the crew interacts with each other, and the way the show is, the way we kind of take the show in. So I like that that's the way that they're doing it, and they're not just, like I said, making it an arbitrary shift in tone. So Trek, Rob, who's in the chat, says he loved it as well. He thought it was epic. He loves Pike. Loves Tilly, who he's a big Tilly fan, just from previous appearances with us. Tig Notaro is Jet Reno, brilliant. He loves seeing more of the bridge crew, which we kind of did in this episode. They seem to be a little bit more involved, and there's a scene that I definitely want to talk about involving the bridge crew. Ross, who's here, also says he enjoyed it. The new characters were great. The action sequences really worked, and he was sorry to see the science officer get smushed. And Adam responded by saying that he thought that the red shirt.
I thought the red shirt was gonna go in the tip of cap to TOS, but
they faked everybody out with that, which I thought was kind of cool. I think everybody kind of like the red shirt, the engineer, female engineer, was very kind of quiet, didn't say a whole lot on the ship.
So I thought she was like, oh.
Yeah, goner. Yep. They really played into that the trope, but didn't quite go the way that I think everybody expected. The science officer was really like involved in the conversation. He was kind of a jerk, but he was like a for real character that it looked like they were trying to develop a little bit, or make be a thing. But they pulled the rug out from under, and the blue shirt got killed on the away mission.
Yep.
So yeah, I agree with all that. What did you think about the visual style of the episode? Did you sense like a drastic change from season 1 as far as like how it's shot, the way?
Very cinematic, and I can't tell if it's because it's a season premiere or this is how it's going to be for the season, for the rest of the season. So I'm curious to see, if they're going to keep up this cinematic style that feels big picture almost. Just great shots, great ship shots, kind of showing off, a bunch of the sets and even close tied up shots. Burnham walking into Spock's quarters. That shot, it's beautifully composed. I love it, and it's an interior shot. You guys know I like to see the ship shots and stuff, but an interior shot, it's so perfectly balanced. It's a great shot. I'm curious going forward to see if they keep that up or they kind of settle in. So, but either way, I'm loving it.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think this is the most visually impressive probably ever. It really does feel like a motion picture. They definitely changed the aspect ratio. It's more wide. It's more anamorphic, I guess. You would know better than me. I think the terminology, I guess, but it's certainly a more cinematic presentation. That was noticeable pretty early on for me, and I think it was something you said there about like the interiors. Like obviously the ship shots are gorgeous, and I think a step up from season 1. I think the ships, the shots of the Enterprise with the Discovery and the asteroid field. Were really lively and really made the ship a character, and in a way that season 1 maybe didn't always succeed quite as well with. So the ship shots are great, but I think the sets are even a little more comfortable and brighter lit and a little more dynamic from like a lighting standpoint. They're more comfortable. The ship feels more like a place I'd want to be than maybe it did in season 1. It's more homey. Which makes sense. One of the things I remember talking about last season was like early in season 1 when Burnham gets onto the ship, and Context is for Kings, and up through Magic to Make the Sanest Man Go Mad. I thought I noticed that the way that they shot the interiors of the ship kind of changed a little bit as the season went along. Early on in Context is for Kings, they really emphasized the ship being like a really intimidating, kind of scary place. You never know what's kind of lurking around the corner. You don't trust anything, just like Burnham doesn't. She doesn't really feel at home on the ship. She doesn't have a place on the ship. She's kind of just there. And up until you get to Magic to Make the Sanest Man Go Mad, and that episode kind of focuses on Burnham kind of finding her place and getting more comfortable. And by that point, the ship's a little more warm and a little more comfortable, a little more homey. and now that Burnham is like a commissioned officer again, has a rank, has a job, things are like settling back into place for her. It's even more homey, because the show is told through her perspective. I appreciate that. You know, we see the ship the way Burnham does, is the way I take it, at least. Yeah. So I love the interiors. I love the way that the corridors and the bridge and the engineering set, everything about it is lit a little differently. It pops a little more than it did, a little more colorful, and I appreciate that, because all the other shows have sets that feel really homey. Like by the end of the show, that whatever one you're watching, you kind of feel like you're living on that ship, and I feel a little closer to that already in season 2.
Yeah, and I think I don't know which came first, but I think this cinematic feel is kind of trickling down from the short treks, because I feel like they were a little bit more cinematic than the first season, obviously. So maybe, I don't know. That's just something I kind of was thinking about watching the episode. So,
yeah, well, they shot the short treks kind of through the season, from what I understand. Shoot them at convenient times when they had actors and had sets built for other things they were using throughout the season. So maybe that is a sign that like these kinds of production elements and this kind of look and feel is going to be consistent through the season, because the short treks were really, you know, they popped a lot visually, and they did feel very cinematic. Season 1 felt cinematic too. It certainly was a big, we talked about that a lot last season, that it felt like, man, it's such a bigger thing than some of these older Star Trek series were from that standpoint. And this is feeling like almost like an equal step forward from even season 1 from like Enterprise. Yeah, it really does feel like they upped their game even more to give it that cinematic feel.
Yep.
There were a lot of really cool, like that shot you'd mentioned with Burnham standing outside Spock's quarters. One of the things I remember, I've seen the episode a couple of times already, a few times. There are a couple of really cool transitions, like jump cuts, that really worked. Like that shot is a cut from Burnham kind of standing at a window looking at the Enterprise, and they just cut right to her standing at Spock's door, basically. Yeah. Really interesting, kind of different style of editing, I guess, than we're kind of used to in Star Trek. That I also appreciated a lot. There was another version of that too, the scene between Burnham and Sarek before Sarek leaves, talking about Sarek gives Burnham a speech about focus on the problem in front of you and not what's behind. Yeah. And Burnham kind of nods, and the doors close, and then the doors open, and she's walking under the bridge. Like, there's really cool editing going on in this episode that I credit to, I guess, Alex Kurtzman as the director and the editor, obviously, that gave the episode yet another like kind of new, fresh visual element that made it stand out as a little more cinematic. So I was a fan of that too. Thought it was especially well directed on all levels.
Agreed.
What were you gonna say? Go ahead.
No, you can go.
What did you think of Pike? I think we got to talk about Pike.
Yeah, the elephant in the room. Loved him. You guys know I'm a sucker for captains. I loved him. I think he does the character of Pike really well. He is also bringing some new stuff to it, which I can appreciate. I think what's adding to it is, we kind of talked about it before, his difference between him and Lorca are just a different kind of animal. I love, and I hope they don't Voyager it, but I love that there isn't this instant gelling with the crew, and that like he almost has to, they have to learn to trust each other, and I think I was worried that Pike was going to be kind of one or two dimensional, but he seems like he's got this confidence about him, but at the same time, like when he's talking to Burnham, he has this, things he's struggling with too from the war. He's not, he's like an onion too. He's got layers and stuff that we're probably gonna kind of explore down the road. But loved him.
Couldn't agree more. I had the same. My one possible fear with Pike just based on the things I was hearing about how Anson Mount was playing him, and the direction they were going to take the character. I too kind of had this fear of, is it going to be too cardboard cutout perfect Star Trek captain with like they're gonna go the opposite of Lorca and make him like the pitch perfect in every way, cardboard cutout. But I'm definitely not. They made it really clear in this episode that he's a fully formed kind of person that, like you said, they don't necessarily completely trust each other right at the outset. Like not in like in any kind of ill-intentioned kind of way. It's not like, is this guy good or not necessarily, but it's just how much do we like put our fate in this person's hands? Like, do we trust that he can get us through this and not get us into trouble? Like it's a credible, relatable way of reacting to a new leader, I guess, unexpectedly in this case. I thought that was really cool, and he had the same reaction to the crew, that he obviously wasn't quite sure what he was getting into with the crew. And I love maybe my favorite scene in the whole episode is when he does the roll call on the bridge before they get into the situation. I thought that was really cool. That's just such a like a cool little moment that you don't get in Star Trek, but feels so like needed too, because we don't really know these bridge characters for the most part, other than Burnham and Saru. Like most of the people going around that bridge, you know who they are, you've seen their faces, you know what they do, but they never really took the time in season 1, because it's not what the show was and what the show probably is, to introduce these characters and tell us anything about it. And a roll call certainly doesn't do that, but it felt good to like do that and give each character a little second to say their name and give them a little breathing room like that. I thought that was cool.
Which I think fits within like what's happening in the story, but also it was for us, the audience, to, like you said, get to know the bridge crew and stuff. So it's like a double-edged sword there. So
absolutely, yeah.
Yep.
Couldn't have loved that more. And yeah, I love the layers of Pike. I thought the scene when he picks up the fortune from obviously Lorca's bowl of fortune cookies is really cool, and it could certainly mean a lot of things for a lot of different characters. I think the fortune says, not all cages are prisons, not all losses are eternal. Something along those lines. I might have the exact quote wrong, but that's definitely the gist of it. And you could certainly apply that to not all losses are eternal, to Stamets and Culver, but
a bunch of different stuff.
Yeah, but Pike's arc, we know where Pike ends up in the menagerie. Doesn't necessarily have a happy ending, and that arc that he has in the menagerie is certainly foreshadowed in that fortune, which I thought was really cool. So yeah, he had lots of really good moments. I posted on Twitter a question right before we went live: who was the MVP of the episode? And I haven't looked at it in a few minutes, but right off the within seconds, I was getting Anson Mount, Pike. I think everybody was pretty uniformly. Anson Mount was the MVP of the episode, and I would personally agree with that. I think he was. I don't know about you. Is that who your choice would be as the MVP of Brother?
Yeah, some characters, when actors, when they go into a new character, it takes some time to kind of adjust and stuff like that. He just felt so at home in the captain's chair, and
absolutely,
yeah, I loved him. And I'm a sucker for captains, just as much as the next person. But I'm curious. Like, this is just me. Like, is he gonna stay for just this season, or will we see him again? Or I don't know.
It makes me want a Pike show. It makes me want a show that takes place on the Enterprise with Pike in command.
Yep.
He's that good and that interesting, and he's somebody that you immediately want to like follow, and you want to see what he's going to do. You want to spend time with the guy.
Yep.
So I think he's great. I love the scene before when he's introducing himself to the crew. He's standing in front of the view screen. His whole like rap sheets on the view screen, and he's talking about I know what happened with Lorca. I'm not him. Like just his whole presentation, the way he speaks is so like it's like coming off of Lorca. Like I said, it's maybe it doesn't work as well. Not a response to Lorca. Not as a response to Lorca. But coming off of Lorca, it really hits home. It really does feel like, man, we can breathe now. We have a real guy here. We have like the perfect starship captain to take care of us after that.
Yeah.
I loved everything involving him in the episode. I think all the best things in the episode, my favorite things in the episode, are related to Pike. And that's not to say the other stuff didn't work. There's another arc that I want to talk about, another little thing that they set up that I'm really interested in, that I love as well. But I can't say enough about how much I love Anson Mount and how excited I am to see what he does for the rest of the season.
Yeah.
And that it's not like a one-off thing where he's going to be here for the foreseeable future.
I think just the writing was great too, because he had so many good one-liners and stuff like that, and when they warp out and fly good, and he just had so much charisma, and I don't know, it's just a great character, and I'm excited.
Yeah. So. And Lorca had a lot of charisma too. Like but it was such a different kind of charisma. He was manipulative and was a military kind of guy, and he got that kind of loyalty from his crew in a completely different way. Yeah. But it was refreshing to see, like, your classic Star Trek captain, who says all of the right things and knows what. Yeah, Rob agrees. The Detmer fly good. Yeah. It really was. He delivers that really, really well. His comedic timing's good. He's like you said, he plays the layers really well. He implies a lot of things about baggage that he has, I'm sure, and we're gonna hear a lot about that, I think. Yeah. We know the cage already happened, and in the cage he's second guessing his career, and I'm hoping to hear maybe a little bit more about that, and the way his character arc has developed from there and to where we are now. So really, really excited for Pike and Anson Mount. Definitely a good addition to the cast.
Let's dive into the flashbacks a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not to steer the conversation away from great Anson Mount, but I think I liked the flashbacks. I think it's needed in this situation when you can tell there's this the relationship between Burnham and Spock. It's needed. It's it's kind of explaining why this relationship the way it is the way it is. So I think it was needed.
Yeah, I agree. I think that context is going to be really, really critical to the way the story is going to go. It's obviously the big arc of the season is obviously this Red Angel, 7 red signals scattered throughout the galaxy thing, and how it relates to Spock. But the emotional journey that we're obviously going to go on is this Spock Burnham relationship. There's a lot of hints dropped about things that happened between the two of them in their childhood or in their upbringing that are alluded to, but these flashbacks play a part in that, and lines that Burnham drops play a part in that. Like, it's all a big part of the soup. Everything's part of the soup to kind of lay this mystery out there. But that's clearly going to be like the emotional pull of the season.
Yep.
And I think that I get the sense that the flashbacks may, I hope, continue to be a part of it, and we continue to see more of it, more of their relationship as children, and the beginnings of their dynamic together. So I appreciated that. We don't always get a lot of backstory like that in Star Trek, like really flashback kind of stuff. Like, where did these characters come from?
Yep.
And getting that is kind of refreshing. I think it deepens the universe and is a little bit of a different flavor than maybe we're used to. So I appreciate that. And like I talked about last week in our kind of conversation and lead up to the season, I love that Discovery is adding layers to the series kind of retroactively with the stories it's telling. And this is such a big story about such a big character that if they're successful with it and they do things well with doing adding these layers to Spock, it could add new things to the original series completely. Going back to the original series, it gives you new things to be thinking about, things to be looking for. And I'm looking forward to those kinds of things being revealed throughout the season and giving all new reasons to watch the original series for the upteenth time. For people like me who have been watching it their whole life. It's a 50-year-old show that I've seen many, many times, and the show one of my favorite things about Discovery, as I've said, is that it's adding these new flavors that are making it, making me eager to go back and watch it over again. So I'm hoping that these flashbacks and Spock backstory elements are going to continue to do that.
Yeah.
The other thing I'll say about the flashbacks and that storyline is I think one of the secret weapons of this show, consistently really, really good, is James Frain as Sarek. I think he's awesome. Yep. He's really, really good in every scene he's in. I love him. Every scene from season 1 on that he's involved in is a standout. So just want to throw that out there too. Yeah. That I love James Frain.
I also love the continuity between seasons, keeping Alice in Wonderland too.
Yes.
We don't sometimes miss continuity things like that with things like that, but I love to see that because I think that's part of Burnham's character, and I don't want them to go away from that. So.
Yeah. And like we talked about, this is a drastic shift in tone and style of story it's telling from season 1, and elements like that give the show, a through line that are going to connect these seasons together. So I think it's really important to keep things like that in play, to link these seasons together and to make it feel like a cohesive whole, even though the seasons may drastically be different. It's clear. It seems pretty clear that this season's going to feel really different than season 1.
It already does.
It already does in all kinds of ways. The way the characters interact, the style, the type of story it's telling, the humor of it. So the continuity elements like that are going to be really critical, I think, to making the show feel cohesive.
Yep. Yes. Yep.
Yeah. So do you get the sense? Do you think, or would you like to see these effects kind of continue, spread throughout the season? Like, are you expecting to see? Is this isolated to like establishing the groundwork for the arc in the first episode or 2, or do you think we're going to get little hints of this throughout the season?
As far as flashbacks go, or which?
Yeah,
I think flashbacks. I hate making predictions, but I think that they will still trickle down through the seasons as it goes. I think that it's an effective. Like I talked about before, it's effective in kind of giving a reason why that their relationship is the way it is, and which is part of the mystery of it, because we all want to know what went on between the two. So I think it's going to be an effective tool going in Discovery's tool belt going to further into the season. So
yeah, I couldn't agree more. I'm hoping that they hang around and they continue to factor in to the season, because I think it can add a lot. I think it can give a lot of backstory and critical information in a way that's more interesting. Characters necessarily just kind of sitting around talking about things that happened in the past. I think I'd like to see it continue.
Yeah.
So yeah. What do you think of the sort of plot element that's going to kind of pull us through the season? This Red Angel 7 bursts. We don't get a whole lot of information about it. It goes really quickly. It's not, there's not a whole lot of information about it yet. But is that because this is going to be kind of the story that links everything together this season? Is that something that you're interested in? Do you think it's?
I think I'm very interested in it. It's very mysterious. I think it's a really cool sci-fi concept, which fits right in Star Trek, obviously. But also, I think it's a way to kind of explore the galaxy. You're not in one region of space. You're in 7 different parts of this huge galaxy where anything could happen. So I think, yes, it's a great sci-fi concept, and it's interesting to me. It's a cool idea, but also it's a way to for kind of Discovery and us as an audience to kind of explore the galaxy right now. Yeah. So
it forces them to bounce around a little bit and not keep them isolated to one sort of area or one sort of mission. It does give them the license to go to different places and along the way encounter all kinds of different things.
Yep.
So I definitely appreciate that. I'm curious to see, and I don't know quite how I feel yet. Like I don't know which way I prefer to see them go. I want to see how more about the direction they're going and how they do it. But like what this Red Angel is, I'm kind of torn by the notion of is it going to end up being something that's like connected to canon somehow, continuity somehow? Is it going to be something that people are going to go, I know what that is? Or is it going to be something completely new and fresh that we don't know about? And my instinct is to say, I'd like it to be something new.
Yes.
and something fresh that is like isolated to Discovery. It's something that Discovery can kind of claim as its own. I don't necessarily need it to be an TOS connection kind of moment. Like there's plenty of that. On paper, that's where I'm standing right now, but I'm open. It depends. If they do it really well and it's a cool moment, I'm certainly not going to be upset. But I do hope that they can do something that they can kind of claim as their own, and they don't. I hope they don't feel like everything they do has to be tied to previous continuity somehow.
What if this is the Sphere Builders prototype?
That would be that would be really cool. If they tie it to Enterprise somehow, then I'll be like, wow, that's Future Guy, it's Archer, it's something weird like that.
Yeah.
And I'm down. Any reference to Enterprise, I'm happy with.
Okay.
But I'm curious. I think that's going to be a constant tug and pull this season.
Right.
Like, what is it, and how does it tie, and does it tie? I think there's going to be a lot of speculation as the season hints dropped and theories being constructed.
Yes.
All across Star Trek Twitter, I'm sure we'll get all kinds of interesting theories.
Yeah.
Well, go ahead.
I have a theory that we will see some more characters than just Spock, and I can't take credit for this. I don't know if you guys don't. TrekCore is probably the best website for news and a few theories and reviews and stuff. They talked about, and this kind of leads into kind of what I want to talk about. Stamets mentioned a botanist on the Enterprise.
Yes.
Who is that? So I'm curious to see, if we see characters from TOS. But yeah, this kind of leads into the discussion about Stamets and the Spore Drive and Tilly, and if we want to move on to that.
Yeah. I think I saw that question about the botanist. And TrekCore's theory about who that is. I guess we'll see. Anything's possible. This show is proof they're willing to push the envelope, and they're capable of surprising people. They're good at keeping some things under the vest, so to speak. Like, there could be surprises along the way that we don't know about. I think the theory that maybe there are other characters previously known that could pop up along the way, given our tie to the Enterprise and knowing who could be on this ship at this time, leads to all kinds of possibilities. So I guess we'll have to see. One thing that I'll say, kind of tying back real quick to that, the overarching plot that's going to drive the season.
Okay.
Something I've noticed that Discovery does, and I'm not saying that this is an issue. I don't necessarily think it's a problem, but it's a difference between old school 90s era Star Trek and even TOS and the way Discovery operates, is these sorts of story elements, these like big picture science fiction things, they tend to come and go. Like when they introduce the concept, they're very fast. Like they come rapid fire, like walking down a corridor, like in this episode where the science officer from the Enterprise, Connolly, is explaining, we found these bursts, we don't know what they are, they're not moons, they're not stars, we can't scan them. Every time we scan them, the ship goes haywire. Like it's in old school Star Trek, this kind of information that like establishes the kind of episode you're going to be in or the kind of mission they're going to go on tended to be like sitting around a conference room in like a slowly paced like kind of conversation dissecting the problem or the thing that they're exploring. And Discovery delivers that information much faster. And I think I see a lot of people, and myself included, kind of questioning or being like, well, I didn't quite catch that. Like trying to piece together like what exactly, like how did the Enterprise get damaged and what happened there? That information's there. You just have to like really listen, and you might have to go back and watch it again and like focus on that piece of information because they really do deliver it quickly and then they move on. Like it's not, they don't dwell a lot on that like expositional kind of science fiction-y, this is the concept, this is the thing we're dealing with kind of stuff.
Right.
they deliver it, they lay it on the ground out there, and they move on and they tell their story. Which again, I'm not sure. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. They shouldn't do it that way, but it is kind of a stark difference.
Yeah, which I think it could be a good and bad thing. It definitely adds the rewatchability. I think like as we watch it more, we understand what happened more. But I have faith that if it's important, they spend time on it. If it is not so much as important, they like they did, quickly move through it. So
yeah, I tend to agree. If it's just kind of casual background that's setting the things in motion to get us to where we need to go, it tends to be expositional dialogue that's delivered quickly and then they move on. And do you have faith in the heart, Dan? Adam asks.
I love. Yeah, we'll just move on.
Everybody here has faith in the heart, Adam.
Yes.
Trek Live, we have faith in the heart.
Yes.
This is an enterprise-friendly show.
Yes.
So, Jordan says that he agrees that they speak so fast that he can't necessarily always comprehend what's being said. And I've noticed a lot of people, like just in talking to people in the house about this episode, like a lot of questions being asked, like, what happened to the Enterprise? Why is it so damaged? And when I went back and watched it again, I was like, oh, okay. Like I heard it there. Yeah. Like it's not necessarily focused on. There's not a lot of time spent on like developing. Okay, this is what happened and how it happened and why it happened. Mm-hmm. Now we're in this position and we need help. Like it's not, the information's not delivered in that kind of manner. It's quick lines of dialogue and then it's past us, gone.
Yep.
So that kind of delivery system does lead to questions and initial frustration for some people. But if you go back and watch it again, might not satisfy all your needs and wants for like wanting that background information, especially if you're used to old school Trek where they really focus on that kind of stuff. But it's there sparingly, but it's there. Yeah.
Which I think is almost a product of the time and the product of filmmaking and storytelling in right now. So, I don't know. I'm just curious to see if that is a big factor moving forward for people, why they don't like Discovery. So
Jordan says it didn't feel very thought out in smaller ways like that. And yeah, it's to be fair, it's not like to focus on, and that's either depending on your perspective, like an okay move or not an okay move, depending on where you come from and the kind of Star Trek you like and the kinds of things you like them to focus on. But he's saying, for example, if the Enterprise suffered some issues scanning the signals, did they make any moves to prevent the Discovery from suffering the same fate? Yeah, like that kind of stuff is not a heavy focus for this show, evidently. I think they're introducing that kind of information very quickly, and then they don't want to spend time in briefing room kind of scenes talking about this is how we're going to handle this situation. So I guess our ability to like deal with that is dependent on our ability to like take for granted that happened, just not necessarily on screen. I guess. I don't know.
To use our like
I'm typically okay with that. I guess I do miss like the slow paced, because I'm used to this, like sitting around the conference table and like talking about the issue and figuring it out and coming up with a plan and then going out on the bridge and executing the plan. TNG, Voyager all did that. Deep Space Nine did that. But this show doesn't tend to do that very often.
It's like it's less technobabble, I guess. But I think Captain Pike seems like the captain who would have a conference room and a conference table and work things out. But we'll see, I guess.
Maybe we'll see it along the way. You never know. But I get where people are coming from in saying the show. Like to me, like I love Discovery. I'm a fan of it. But to me, like that kind of criticism, that kind of thing that people say they miss, I understand where they're coming from, and I feel like that's a valid thing.
Yes,
that's a valid reason for somebody to say, I it's not necessarily my Trek. Like it's not my favorite kind of Star Trek, because it doesn't necessarily do those kinds of things.
Right.
Like I can definitely respect that. And he says the new science officer was killed, and they never mention him again. did Pike not like him? Like, yeah, I mean, granted, yeah, I mean, to me, like that, TOS does that a lot too. You know, characters get killed on away missions, landing parts. It's kind of like, like Kirk might bemoan it for a minute and then they move on, which is kind of par for the course for Trek, I guess.
Yeah.
But to be fair, like Jordan brings that up, that sequence, that action science officer gets killed, Connolly from the Enterprise.
Yeah.
That if I had to pinpoint like a moment in the episode that I don't want to say I checked out, but like my least favorite portion of the episode, it is probably that action sequence, like in those little pods getting through the asteroid field. Like that to me felt kind of derivative of like the space jump scene in 2009, the space jump between the Enterprise and the Vengeance and Into Darkness. Like it felt very intentionally or not, I don't know, echoing sequences. And it's certainly cool. It's well done. The visuals are awesome. Like it's exciting. But I found myself wanting to get to these characters talking to each other again, you know, like in a normal situation. Once they got onto the asteroid and they were like exploring and trying to rescue the crew of this Hiawatha and figure out what's going on. I like that. That worked for me. That felt like Star Trek. But yeah, that's where I would point at and say if there's a dip in the episode for me personally, it would be that couple of minutes that they're flying around these convenient little pods.
Yeah. It almost was like, you know, insert action sequence here, like it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the Kelvin timeline movies are typically kind of guilty of that too.
Yes.
Like, and they tend to be those moments here kind of moments tend to be my least favorite moments in those movies too.
Yeah.
So that felt like Alex Kurtzman kind of Star Trek to me. Yeah, Jordan says you've been there, done that. Then they just kind of beam back like a video game. Yeah, like fair enough.
Yeah.
Like that action sequence is not necessarily really needed, other than giving the episode some excitement from like a basic level, I guess. I don't know. Feeling like they needed an action sequence. Yeah. I don't think they did, because like I said, I was sitting there like, okay, get through this, like get back to the dialogue and the character stuff. But yeah. Did you agree with that? Like, is that how did that action scene work for you? Like,
no, that's a fair criticism, and I don't want to be, I don't want to have my blinders on. We both love Discovery, but I want to be critical of it too, because I love it so much. So I don't want anyone in chat or Bill and I, because sometimes I, hold my tongue a little bit. I don't want to do that. I want to, like, we're here to
talk about things that don't work.
Yeah, we're here to put the episode under a microscope, and I want to explore everything. So, it didn't work for me. I definitely, like you said, I checked out. So, yeah.
The highlights of the episode are largely Pike on the bridge with the crew, or Pike with Burnham. Like those are the things that work the best in this episode for me. Some of the other stuff works well too in my book. Like once they're on the asteroid and Jet Reno and that is fine for me. Like that feels like a Star Trek episode. And I can go with that. It's not my favorite element of the episode. I am anxious watching it to get back to the Enterprise, but I'm happy with it. But to me, the high points are clearly the Pike Burnham Pike bridge in command stuff.
Yes.
And I thought, I guess just kind of jumping right off of that, a question popped in my head. How did the humor work for you? Did Pike's humor, did Tilly's humor, and like all that stuff, did that land for you?
I think it worked better in the episode, like in the teasers, especially in the turbo lift, with the alien, with Linus. It seemed a little forced, but to me, it kind of felt better just without the episode. Like with Tilly on the bridge, I thought I broke a captain, little things like that. I think that's when Trek is at its best with humor. When there's little moments like that and little things to make you chuckle and this is same with not just Tilly. I know Tilly is kind of like the forefront as far as humor goes, but Anson Mount had some, or Captain Pike had some great comedy moments as well. So
I couldn't agree with that more. The best Star Trek comedy tends to be the little things, like in the dialogue, like natural things that come out, not so much like the big set piece things, like you get in a turbo lift with a weird alien who sneezes, like that. That feels forced and like, contrived a little bit. So I agree with that. I think like the Tilly stuff on the bridge with Pike, some of that humor works.
Yep.
Pike's more relaxed demeanor, like that leads to some funny stuff. So I think a lot of the humor does work, but I do agree that there are times where I think they try a little too hard and don't necessarily need to.
Like the turbo
like
lift.
things like Linus. Yeah. What else? What did you think about the asteroid thing, like capturing the asteroid through the shuttle bay?
I thought that was fun. I think it's cool. As much as I'm a big ship nerd, I like to see them use it. I don't want to see this Discovery, this perfectly pristine ship, stay the way it is. I like to see him use it and blow stuff up and get hit by rocks and stuff like that. So I thought that was kind of a fun little moment. I don't know. It almost I don't know. What did you think?
It worked fine for me. It was kind of a side little thing. It's over in a couple of minutes. But I agree. I like the fact that they're kind of using the ship and doing different kinds of things with it. It's not just kind of sitting there. I think giving the ship interesting things to do and getting to see it from different angles and doing different kinds of things, I think, makes it more of a character. And I think the visual style of the episode and the direction they're going visually with the season, evidently, is going to lead to a lot of good opportunities to make the ship feel more alive and like one of the characters.
Because I think that
things like that help.
Yeah, because I think that the focus on the episode was obviously the new captain, Burnham Spock relationship, but it was almost like kind of almost felt like an afterthought. Almost as like, okay, we need something for Tilly and Stamets to do, so let's kind of figure something else out like that. It was just like a small little side story. So yeah,
agreed. It definitely felt like trying to get those characters something to do. Yeah, true, fair enough. Did you like the way that they presented Stamets and kind of his dealing with the grief of losing his partner, like that arc? Are you interested in where that's going? And,
I like that, because I don't want the light switch, the Voyager light switch, to be everything's fine. Like I want to see him struggle. I want to see him daydreaming on the on duty with his his I don't know, apparatus thing. I think I would like to see them struggle and keep that continuity throughout the rest of the season, because it was a traumatic moment, and I think
absolutely.
I don't think the spore drive is done. I know they're shelving it for the moment, but I think obviously from
the
trailer and everything, they dust that thing off and use it. I think the way his character is feeling, it feels real and it feels justified, and and I like Tilly and his relationship.
I agree with that. I like their dynamic. I think that feels but I think my favorite thing about the episode, other than Pike, I think, is that scene at the beginning where Stamets was talking to Tilly, and he talks about everywhere he looks on the ship he sees Culber. And that's to me like a natural thing.
Yes.
That feels real. Like that's earned, and feels like a real way somebody would react in a situation like they're going to associate that person with the place they're in. Like they were living on that ship and working on that ship together. Now that he's gone and it was a traumatic thing and a sudden thing, it makes perfect sense. And everywhere he looks, there's a memory, and it's a little much for him to take, and he's going to have to overcome that if he's going to be able to stay. That's going to be a hurdle that he's going to have to go through. And it's not, like you said, the Voyager light switch, which I hear what you're saying, but I think Star Trek might be guilty of that light switch more broadly than just Voyager. But Voyager certainly used it, where people get over the loss of a shipmate or a friend or a lover quickly for the sake of storytelling and keep the show going in its formula. And I love the fact that they're presenting Stamets in a way that feels more reality based in terms of how he's overcoming or needing to overcome the loss of his partner.
Yeah.
So I'm eager to see where that goes. I'm glad that that's evidently going to be his arc for the season. He's thinking about leaving the ship because of all these ghosts, Tilly puts it. The ship feels haunted with Hugh Culber. And he's going to have to deal with that over the course of the season to decide what he's going to do.
Yep.
Excited for that. I think that's the right way to go in modern TV, and unfortunately, kind of been absent from Trek in most cases.
Yeah.
Previously. Yep. Any other big threads from the episode that we haven't? What did you think of Reno, the engineer from the Hiawatha? Kind of touched on her really briefly.
I liked her. I love engineers. Besides the captain, that's probably one of my favorite. The character of the engineer is one of my favorites besides the captain.
You gravitate to that.
Yeah, I gravitate towards the engineer. I think the character is really interesting, and I think, which is going to be tough because I feel like Discovery is full of interesting characters, but I think again they hit the nail on the head. It's another interesting character. It's like they've got a printing press there, just interesting character. So, I'm excited to see if she sticks around and where that
kind of
character,
role she'll have on the ship.
What kind of role. So,
yeah, I'm interested in that too. She's obviously got a very dry personality, dry wit, and I think that's something that the show doesn't really have. That's sort of, they don't have that angle covered. So I think that's probably a good thing. But it'll be interesting to see the kind of role she has, how involved she's going to be episode to episode, if she's going to stick around. My instinct is that she will be around, but how involved is going to be something we'll have to learn as we go.
Yep.
But I'm eager to see where they take that character, what she ends up becoming. We don't have an engineer on the ship really. So you never know. Maybe she'll be around in the long run. Maybe she'll be the chief engineer of Discovery. Yeah. Down the road.
Because Stamets is like an engineering specialist. Right?
Sort of. Yeah, he's a specialist in the spore drive.
Yeah.
He's a science
not the chief
officer.
Engineer.
No.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, he's that's kind of I've heard them talk about this, that one of the other things that Stamets is going to have to deal with this season is kind of like you said, evidently through the trailer they dust the spore drive off at some point, but the spore drive is not going to be something that they're going to lean heavily on. So what does he do? Like, that's been his career, that's been his research, that's what got him to where he is.
Yeah.
So taking that away, like he's kind of left with like a what now kind of, like, what's my role in this ship?
Yeah.
Beyond just the trauma of losing his partner. So yeah, he's a science officer who specializes in the mycelial theory and that kind of thing. So yeah, there is that empty kind of classic Star standpoint, chief engineer. So maybe it'll end up being Reno.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Yeah, we'll see.
So it's always very put episodes like this into perspective and to have really objective views. Like 2 days after, these are kind of raw thoughts, and I'm definitely guilty of being inching on the positive side of things in the immediate aftermath most of the time. So as the season plays out and as I get some perspective, I'll certainly have different thoughts, I'm sure. Not necessarily in a negative way, but my opinion on the episode will morph into its final form, I guess, as time goes on. But it was a success for me, from that first blush, first reaction.
Yeah.
standpoint.
One more question.
Sure.
This is like your realm.
Mm-hmm.
Is it too early to rank? Where does this rank?
Oh man.
Do I even want to bring that? Do I want to bring that
dangerous.
to the table right now?
Yeah, I don't know. If somebody put a gun grade right now, the first thing that would come out of my mouth is probably like B plus,
Okay.
ish. But I don't know. So that would put it like 6, 7, maybe
Okay.
ish. But that's definitely, I'm sure, subject to change. What about you? Like, you're the you're not a ranker like me.
No.
Necessarily to that level, but what's your instincts say as far as like where this fits in the grand scheme of things?
As far as if we're talking letter grade, I think A minus, and I think
A minus. Okay.
I think what's going into that as well is this first episode back. You know, all those emotions.
Right.
You know, it might settle into, you know, an A, like you said, maybe a B plus, but I'm kind of leaning into the hype a little bit, but I'm trying to remain objective and kind of seeing how it plays out. So,
yeah, season premieres are always tough.
Yeah.
Adam says I would rank rankings if I could. He's right. I would. So, yeah. Season premieres are tough because you have all that emotion of back,
Yes.
and it's fresh and it's exciting and it's introducing new elements,
Yeah.
and you don't know the context of where it's going to lead. Like it's going to lead breadcrumbs for what's coming, and how those breadcrumbs are picked up and capitalized on is going to change potentially how I feel about the premiere.
Right.
So it's always a weird situation to know exactly like how it fits right off the bat.
Yeah.
But I felt good about it. That's for sure. It felt good watching it. It felt like it was real. And I was not one to say that like Star Trek Discovery in the first season didn't feel like real Star Trek. But to me, it did. I thought it felt different. It felt like a new kind of Star Trek, but there were enough elements of Trek sprinkled through it, and I never questioned that really. But this really did too. I mean, this felt more so like traditional Star Trek in a lot of ways, and a lot of that is due to Anson Mount as Pike.
Yeah.
I think he really brings that like, okay, Star Trek kind of thing. I remember with that. There's a shot I sent you yesterday. The 3 crewmen from the Enterprise, Pike,
On the transporter
engineer,
pad.
and on the transporter pad, just like the image of red shirt, blue shirt, gold shirt standing on the transporter pad, that just makes you go, like,
Yeah.
Star Trek,
Yeah.
like undeniably
Yes.
Star Trek.
Yep.
And that was like the moment where I was like, oh, holy crap, you're like, this is Star Trek. So yeah, it definitely had that feel for me. That there was like a relief of felt like coming home, I guess.
Yep.
But it left me feeling excited for what's coming. Like it didn't disappoint in really any way. So I'm excited for what's coming. I'm excited to keep watching this a couple more times this week. I watched it that night. I watched it again that night, kind of in the background. I didn't like sit like my eyes peeled on it, but I had it playing in the background. I was kind of listening to it, and I watched it yesterday. So I've kind of been giving it a few looks over the last couple of days. I'm sure I'll do a couple more before Thursday. So I guess that's a good sign. I can't say I do that every single time. You know, I maybe premieres I do.
Yeah.
But I don't know. But
Yep.
So we're both definitely positive on Brother. We both thought.
Yes.
I think we made that clear pretty much from the outset, and I feel as confident now after talking about it than I did that I did before we started talking about it. So, yeah.
Yep.
What about your rewatch?
I'm hitting the stars have aligned. I just watched Chain of Command.
Oh man.
So I got Chain of Command, this super strong 2-parter, and then Discovery. So it's peak TOS TNG mixed with a premiere of Discovery, I think couldn't ask for a better situation. So it's definitely it's going well. I'm loving season 6. I've definitely been more active on Twitter, so definitely if you're not following Bill or I, definitely go check that out.
Yeah,
because I'm active on Twitter, especially through season 6, and through Discovery also. So
what's your Twitter handle for those who might not?
I'm at Trek Live.
Yeah.
So yeah, yep. And what's yours?
You can find me at TrekFan4387.
Yep.
And I also tweet as I go through rewatches. I'm a little stagnant right now. I'm still season 3 of TOS that I'm hoping to pick up this weekend. I've been pretty focused on the last couple of weeks. I've been watching Discovery season 1, getting ready for this. So I'm hoping to jump back on board with season 3 of TOS and finishing that in the next couple of weeks. So I'll be tweeting that as I go. I tweet grades and polls, and I pick an MVP of every episode. So yeah, if you're not following me now, you should definitely head on Twitter and hit the follow button on @TrekLive and @TrekFan4387.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
I guess if we're plugging things, as you probably guys have noticed, hopefully the audio sounds better. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts. If it's not, I'm gonna go crazy. The episodes are now gonna be on our iTunes feed. So we'll have that the next day for you guys to listen to after the fact. That I'm not trying to take away from the main show. The main show is where it's at. Definitely being a part of the discussion and chat makes Trek Live what it is. But it's nice to have a replay in a very accessible location. So definitely check that out and subscribe and give us a rating, because those are important too, I hear. So
yeah, that's what we hear.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're definitely eager to get on the more traditional podcast platforms too. Definitely, if you like to consume your Trek Live like on a car ride or something like that, it's a little more convenient than YouTube. But as Dan said, we definitely love the YouTube platform, and that's what gave us the idea of the show. That's what made us want to do it, having these interactions with people like Jordan, who's here now, and Adam, and Rob, and Ross was in the chat today, and just letting you guys kind of take part and helping to steer our conversation, but also get to know each other. Like, it's a good place to meet other Star Trek fans and have live interactions with them through the chat. So we always want to make YouTube and that live stream platform our home, but we're excited to have the podcast platform as well, this the YouTube version. So excited for that as we move forward.
Yeah. As far as content, I'll just make it quick. The Ready Room. There's a new episode of The Ready Room. Favorite podcast besides this one, obviously. But yeah, that one. Definitely have to check that out.
Yeah. Ready Room's always a treat. It doesn't happen nearly as often these days as it once did. But it's Chris Jones, the founder of Trek FM, and Larry Nemechek, talking about the latest in Star Trek news. And they have a really good rapport, and they cover the news really well. They have a good perspective on things. And for long-time Star Trek podcast fans who, like us, maybe our first Star Trek podcasts were from the Trek FM network, those voices are comforting for sure. So whenever there's a new Ready Room, it goes right to the top of the queue. For me, I know, and I know for Dan too. So I'll stick with that too. I think because it's a rarity, and they don't happen too often. That should be our big plug of the week, I guess, for other Star Trek content. Everybody should go listen to that.
Yeah. I guess we'll stop. I guess we'll start wrapping up the show. A little bit longer episode. Just had a lot to cover. What's the name of the next Discovery episode?
They haven't said.
Okay.
That's different than last season. Okay. Last season they dropped them like in chunks. They say the next 9 episodes.
Yeah. Okay.
And we have no idea. They only announced the title of the premiere, so that's a mystery. I'm sure. Hopefully, we'll get a title in the next couple of days.
Yep.
But whatever it's called, we'll be talking about it next week, right?
Yes, next week we'll be talking about episode 2. Obviously, Bill and I are really excited the next month or two to kind of go through this, because if you guys remember last year, we were on Facebook for part of the season, and a bunch of stuff was going on. So I think we settled into YouTube, and then we're settling into the iTunes feed. Really excited. Future discussions and keeping the discussion going. So
yeah, looking forward to it. One little piece of information: next episode, Discovery. We don't know the name of it. We don't know what it's about. We don't know what the story is, really, the independent story at least. But Jonathan Frakes direct. So we do know that.
The legend is among us.
Legend. So we have that to look forward to. We have new Jonathan Frakes directing Star Trek on Thursday night. So excited for that. Can't wait to talk about it.
So excited. Yeah. Anytime Frakes is involved, I'm there. So.
Me too.
All right. Yeah, the discussion doesn't have to stop here. Follow us on Twitter. Head over to Discord in the iTunes feed. And we'll see you guys next week.
Yep. Thanks for watching or listening.